So in our first two parts, we talked about the political factions of the Ironborn. Victarion wants the old way, Asha wants the new way, and Euron wants the long night. We've also found out that a lot of creepy dudes have been hanging in Slaver's Bay at the same time, stalking a 16-year-old girl. We've got Euron, we've got Warlocks, we've got Daario, and we've got the Corsair King. Are these guys working with each other? Are they working for each other? Are they the same people? Now I'd like to talk about the Corsair King for a second. He's based out of the Basilisk Isles and tries to buy slaves in Astapor just 3 days before Dany. He fails at this, but is somehow still able to raid the Summer Isles just a little bit later. Now the Summer Isles are on the way back to the Iron Isles, so it could be that Euron is actually the Corsair King. But what use would Euron have for Unsullied? They're good for land war, not sea raiding. Whoever the Corsair King is, they have a land invasion in mind, and they must have been disappointed when Daenerys took all of their slaves. Which brings me to a weird event that happens after Dany conquers Meereen. A Qartheen trader arrives and starts telling Dany how horrible Astapor is. The city bleeds, dead men rot unburied in the streets, each pyramid in an armed camp, and the markets have neither food nor slaves for sale. Ah, so that's it. The Qartheen is interested in slaves. And the poor children. King Cleaver's thugs have seized every highborn boy in Astapor to make new Unsullied for the trade. Though it will be years before they are trained. Ah, and he's not just interested in slaves, he's interested in Unsullied. What do you want of me, Captain? Slaves. My holds are full to bursting with ivory, ambergris, zorse hides, and other fine goods. I would trade them here for slaves, to sell in Lys and Volantis. We have no slaves for sale. My queen, the riverside is full of Meereenese, begging leave to be allowed to sell themselves to this Qartheen. They are thicker than flies. In the free cities they will be tutors, scribes, bed slaves, even healers and priests. They will sleep in soft beds, eat rich foods, and dwell in manses. I see. Any man who wishes to sell himself into slavery may do so. Or woman. Now what's interesting about this scene is that Daario's intervention allows slaves to be sold again. Daario convinces Dany that somehow the life of a slave is a good life. However, it's very clear that the trader is interested in fighters, and yet Daario convinces Dany that they'll be used as bed slaves and tutors. Considering the fact that Meereen now has a surplus of pit fighters because Dany has closed the pits, there should be plenty of fighting slaves for the Qartheen trader to choose from. And so I'm suspicious. The Corsair King was interested in slave fighters. And so is this Qartheen trader who Daario has convinced Dany into selling slaves to. If you still don't think this Qartheen trader is suspicious, let's take a look at his hold. He's bringing ivory and ambergris from Qarth. Now one would think that ivory would come from Volantis with all of those elephants, and ambergris comes from Wales, so one would think that might come from the Ibbenese. And he's bringing his slaves away from Qarth towards Lys and Volantis, around the smoking ruins of Valyria. Why not sell them back in Qarth where they're also wanted? Now yes, ivory and ambergris can come from other sources, and maybe they pay more for slaves in Lys, but it's suspicious. One would expect a Qartheen trader to have holds filled with jade and saffron. And it gets weirder. An envoy is also aboard this trader's ship. His name is Gael, and he's supposedly an envoy from Astapor, although he doesn't appear in any appendices. On a few occasions, he tries to get Dany to join Astapor in their war against Yunkai. Dany thinks Astapor going to war with Yunkai is a ridiculous idea, and she doesn't really understand why they're doing it. Gael says it's to end slavery in Yunkai, but Astapor is a slave city, so that doesn't really make sense. What also doesn't make sense is that Gael gets promoted to being a lord at some point. Why? He's been completely unsuccessful in bringing Dany into the war. Now we find out from Quentyn's perspective that the Astapori were clearly under the impression that Dany was going to join them in war. So what the hell was their envoy telling them? Did Gael misinform Cleon and tell him that Dany was on his side? Is that why Gael was promoted? Is that why the Astapori entered a war in which they were seriously outgunned? The Windblown described the Yunkai-Astapori war as an absolute slaughter. It seems very possible that Gael started the Yunkai-Astapori war, and him being aboard the Qartheen trader's ship makes me wonder if he's cooperating with Daario and the Corsair King. Daario is also inexplicably pro-war. He even randomly goes out on a sortie and seems to kill Yezin's nephew. Yezin is of course the head of the Peace faction in Yunkai. Now there's one last reference to a Corsair ruler from the Basilisk Isles in our story, and that's in the Sorrows. The Sorrows are located in the ruins of Chroyane. It was once a great Rhoynish city that went to war with Valyria. but the Valyrians destroyed it, including its Palace of Love, which is probably a great wonder of the world. Now Tyrion, Jon Connington, and Aegon travel through this area. They discuss how the Sorrows are now ruled by a corsair from the Basilisk Isles. This Prince of Sorrows, aka Shrouded Lord, aka Stony King, rules over an army of stone men. They normally don't attack people, but they suddenly choose to attack Aegon and company. Well, actually, it's a little more complicated than that. First, they pass by the stone men and aren't attacked, but then Tyrion blurts out a bunch of stuff about Aegon's true identity and how Tyrion killed his dad, and suddenly they're teleported back. This time, the stone men choose to attack Aegon, Jon Connington, and Tyrion. Now, Haldon Halfmaester kind of says that the Prince of Sorrows can choose who gets grayscale, so in the end, Jon Connington gets grayscale, but Tyrion does not. Now, whoever the Prince of Sorrows is, he seems to have the ability to teleport people, he seems to have the ability to give people grayscale, and he seems to hate Aegon and his allies. So the Prince of Sorrows is not just some random pirate, he's a player in the Game of Thrones and the Song of Ice and Fire. But something doesn't quite make sense. If somebody hates Aegon enough to want to kill him, and somebody hates Jon Connington enough to give him grayscale, why would that person spare Tyrion? Tyrion is helping them. Shouldn't he be marked for death as well? And it's actually more nuanced than that. The Shrouded Lord had the stone men attack Tyrion, grabbing him unyieldingly. Tyrion passes out and meets the Shrouded Lord in his dreams. In the end, though, the stone man lets go, and the Shrouded Lord doesn't give him grayscale. So the Shrouded Lord wanted to kill Tyrion, hesitated, and then decided not to kill Tyrion. Which brings me to my theory on who the Shrouded Lord is. The Shrouded Lord is Garyon Lannister. Garyon Lannister is Tyrion's favorite uncle, who went missing after trying to find the Lannister family sword in Valyria. And he has a lot of similarities to this Shrouded Lord, Prince of Sorrows character. Both men are famous for their sense of humor. Both men have an interest in the wonders of the world. And both men look like Tywin Lannister. When Tyrion dreams of the Shrouded Lord, he dreams of him with his father's face. And if one were going to go to a volcanic island, stone men who can't feel their extremities may be very useful. Now one could argue that lots of people laugh and lots of people are interested in wonders of the world, and Tyrion was simply feeling guilty about killing his father, and Garyon had a different method for getting into Valyria. But here's the big question. Who would want to kill Tyrion, hesitate, and then not do it? Of all the people I can think of, it's only family members, only Lannisters. Tyrion announced to the Sorrows that he killed Tywin, and yet when it came time to kill Tyrion, the Shrouded Lord didn't do it. And this is exactly how Garyon, a man who loved his nephew but likely had a rocky relationship with his brother, would react. Conflicted. Now you may be asking, what does the Chekhov's gun of Garyon Lannister have to do with the Ironborn? Isn't this video about the Ironborn? It is. Now hear me out. Euron comes to the Iron Isles with a dragon horn. He claims he found it in Valyria, where Garyon was trying to go. Now unless Garyon and Euron both independently came up with a suicide quest to go into Valyria, we have to assume that these guys have met. Maybe Euron stole the horn, maybe Garyon gave him the horn, maybe they're the same guy, but there's a connection. And it seems Euron serves a Dark Lord of some sort. Now this may be the Night King, but the Night King hasn't yet appeared in the books, and Euron has showed no interest in the North, even abandoning Moat Cailin. The Shrouded Lord, on the other hand, fits the bill. Tyrion consistently associates him with darkness and night. There also seems to be a link around the Basilisk Isles. The Corsair King of the Sorrows seems to be from there. Euron has Black as Tar crew members on the Silence, and half of the Iron Fleet goes missing around the Basilisk Isles. Now, if there is indeed only one Corsair King from the Basilisk Isles, then both that Corsair King and Euron were near Dany during her fateful time in Astapor. Being in such close proximity is awfully odd, as is their proximity to Daario Naharis, a man who is also associated with Neverending Night and who is suspicious all around. While we're on the topic of Daario, I want to show you something rather curious. In A Dance with Dragons, we find out that Cal Pono and most of the Dothraki are at the headwaters of the Selhoru River. Now if we draw a line between Myr and the Dothraki, we come to the Sorrows, the home of our Shrouded Lord. Now imagine our Shrouded Lord is facing downriver at Volantis. On his left hip, he would have the Dothraki. On his right hip, the Myrish. And now let's look at Daario Naharis. On his left hip, he has a Dothraki Eric, and on his right hip, he has a Myrish Stiletto. Incidentally, it would be a very good time for the Shrouded Lord to face Volantis, as it's vulnerable. Part of the Volantian fleet is upriver because of the Dothraki, and another part is helping Aegon drop off in Westeros. but a massive amount, between 300 and 500 ships, are heading towards Slaver's Bay. And keep in mind, we have a missing Ironborn fleet, along with a missing slave army, not to mention those Dothraki that Tyrion thinks may attack Volantis. Now, some people want an answer to the burning question of whether these men are all the same people, but I don't think it's that important. They all seem to be on the same team, a team that wants the Long Night. And besides their interest in Dany, they also seem to work in concert towards making Volantis vulnerable. Euron has the fleet, the Corsair King has the army, and Daario creates a war in Slaver's Bay that draws the Volantian fleet. But I've been pulled into the Myronese knot a little too much on this video, so next time we'll be heading to the Iron Isles and Euron's arrival.